The grand atrium of Skytech Aero pulsed with a quiet tension, the kind that lingers in the air before a storm. Floor-to-ceiling windows bathed the sleek metallic interior in a flood of morning light, casting long shadows behind the spectators who stood waiting. Engineers, interns, executives, all murmuring with curiosity and a hint of malice. At the center of it all stood Victor Langford, the CEO, charismatic, commanding, and unflinchingly ruthless. Dressed in a tailored navy suit and an expression carved from stone, he looked more like a hawk surveying prey than a leader of innovation. Beside him, a woman stood silently, her presence incongruous with the corporate polish surrounding her. She wore a faded olive jacket, jeans that had seen better days, and boots scuffed by years of wear. Her hands were calloused, her hair tied back in a simple braid, and her eyes, those steady storm-colored eyes, watched everything with an unreadable calm. Her name was Lena Carter, though to most in that room she was just the outsider. Victor's voice broke the silence, smooth and amplified through the glass hall. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for gathering. Today we conduct a rather unorthodox test. A few soft chuckles rippled through the crowd. The smirk tugging at the corner of Victor's mouth deepened as he turned to Lena. This is Miss Carter. She applied for our emergency propulsion consultant position with, let's say, unconventional credentials. No resume, no degree on record, not even a LinkedIn profile. Just a note that said, I fix what others can't. He let the words hang in the air like bait. Laughter this time louder. Someone muttered, she probably fixes tractors in her backyard. Victor's voice sharpened. Well, we do have something that needs fixing. He motioned, and a steel panel slid open at the far end of the hall, revealing a massive jet engine hoisted onto a reinforced platform. Sleek, complex, and still, like a wounded beast waiting for help. The R-7000 prototype. It had grounded 3 test flights and left Skytech's brightest minds scratching their heads for the past 72 hours. This engine, Victor continued, strolling toward it, is worth $2 million. It's the heart of our next-generation long-range aircraft. And it doesn't work. Not even close. He turned sharply toward Lena and, with deliberate drama, tossed her a titanium wrench. It clanged on the floor in front of her, the sound echoing like a challenge. You have 30 minutes, he said. Fix it or walk away. And if you fail, don't ever come back. The room froze. Phones came out. Engineers exchanged looks, some curious, others openly scoffing. This was not a test, it was a spectacle. Public humiliation. Victor knew exactly what he was doing. Lena didn't flinch. She bent down, picked up the wrench, and ran her fingers along its length as though greeting an old friend. Her eyes shifted to the engine. No fear, no hesitation, only focus. She took a slow breath, exhaled, and walked toward the R-7000 like a surgeon approaching an open chest cavity. No one moved. The crowd watched her every step, waiting for the inevitable embarrassment, for the slip-up that would affirm their judgment. But as she reached the engine, rolled up her sleeves, and placed her hand on the outer casing, something strange happened. She smiled. It was fleeting, barely noticeable, but it sent a ripple through the air. Not the smile of arrogance or nervousness, but of familiarity, recognition, as if she had known this machine before it was even built. And far across the room, for just a moment, Victor's confident mask flickered. He didn't know why, but something about that smile made him uneasy. And the clock began to tick. Long before Lena Carter stood beneath the sterile lights of Skytech, before her name was muttered with scorn or curiosity, there was another life. Quiet, promising, and filled with dreams that tasted of oil-stained fingers and stargazing nights. She had once been Lena Ward, a gifted child with a hunger for how things worked, how broken things whispered secrets if you just listened long enough. Her father, a retired aviation mechanic, had called her his miracle with a monkey wrench. Together, they'd spent endless afternoons in their dusty barn-turned workshop in rural Ohio, taking apart everything from lawnmowers to broken radios, rebuilding them with precision and joy. Those days were warm, golden, and filled with laughter, the kind that echoes in memory long after it's gone. But life has a way of changing course without warning. When Lena was 22, she earned a spot in one of the nation's most elite aerospace engineering apprenticeships, run by none other than SkyTech itself. She had walked into the company's imposing headquarters with grease still under her nails and hope burning in her chest. Despite the sneers from ivory-towered interns and the way her overalls made her stick out like a sore thumb in a sea of polished shoes, she had held her own. In fact, she did more than that. She excelled. She brought life to dead engines. She saw patterns others missed. She solved problems without fanfare, just a nod and a smudge of graphite on her cheek. And that's when she met Aaron Langford, Victor's younger brother. Aaron had been the opposite of Victor in every way. Gentle, brilliant, disarmingly awkward. He wasn't interested in titles or power plays, only in pushing the boundaries of aviation. He saw in Lena not just a mechanical genius, but a kindred soul, someone who loved flight not for the profit but for the poetry of it. Late nights turned into stolen mornings, whispered dreams, plans scribbled on napkins, and then quietly they fell in love. But the higher they climbed, the more fragile everything became. Victor had always disapproved. He saw Lena as a threat, unpolished, unpredictable, unschooled in corporate manners. Worse, he resented her influence over Aaron, who began to question SkyTech's priorities, its compromises, its coldness. Behind closed doors, Victor whispered doubts into board members' ears, quietly severing Lena's connections, sabotaging her work, turning admiration into suspicion. Then came the accident. A routine test flight, a minor mechanical oversight, just enough to cast a shadow. Lena had warned Aaron about the flaw days before, had begged him to delay. But he trusted his team. He trusted SkyTech. He never came back. The official report blamed Lena. A miscalculation, they said. Negligence. She was suspended, then blacklisted, without trial, without a chance to defend herself. She was 24. Lone. Shattered. And she disappeared. She changed her name. Left the city. Worked odd jobs under the radar. Fixing fishing boats in Maine, repairing wind turbines in Texas, living out of her truck when she had to. The grief hardened her, but it didn't break her. She never forgot Aaron. She never forgot the engine that failed. And she never forgot Victor Langford's face the day he shook her hand at the memorial, with eyes like ice and a smile that said, "I've won." Years passed. She avoided anything with a corporate logo. But the fire inside her never died, because she knew the truth. She knew she hadn't failed. She knew someone had altered the reports, buried the diagnostics, tampered with the evidence. When a chance came, an anonymous message from an old contact at SkyTech, whispering about another anomaly, another cover-up, and a new engine that bore uncanny similarities to the one that had killed Aaron, Lena didn't hesitate. She walked back into the lion's den not for a job, not even for redemption. She came for answers. And this time, she wasn't leaving without them. The hum of the R7000 engine wasn't just a vibration in the air. It was a whisper from a grave long thought sealed. Lena crouched beside it, her hands grazing its outer panel like one might touch the surface of a coffin containing someone they once loved. The others watched from behind the safety of glass and doubt, but she didn't see them anymore. She was somewhere else, back in a hangar bathed in golden dusk, listening to Aaron's laugh echo through empty fuselages as he tinkered with the very blueprint that would become this engine's ancestor. It hit her all at once. The shape of the intake manifold, the asymmetrical coupling on the magnetic stabilizer, even the placement of the thermometric sensors. This wasn't just SkyTech's new flagship. This was his design. Modified, dressed in sleeker alloys and rebranded as innovation. But beneath the polish, she recognized the soul of a machine she and Aaron had birthed together in midnight labs and coffee-stained journals. And just like that, the years folded in on themselves. Grief returned, sudden and hot, like a scream in her chest. But it didn't weaken her. It sharpened her. Because now she understood. They hadn't just erased her, they had taken him. Taken his genius, buried it under layers of patents and public statements, and turned it into currency. The very thing that had cost Aaron his life was now their prized marvel, and no one even remembered his name. She opened the service hatch, and the world narrowed to metal and memory. Every hiss of compressed air, every pulse of coolant through copper veins. It was like speaking a language she hadn't spoken in years but had never truly forgotten. Her fingers moved on instinct, removing panels, tracing circuitry. Her mind raced ahead, mapping the sequence, hunting for the heartbeat beneath the silence. Then there it was. Flaw. Not the kind that would trigger a warning light or show up in post-flight diagnostics. This was deeper. An irregularity in the harmonics of the combustion cycle. Subtle like a skipped breath. Left unchecked, it would cause thermal feedback in high-altitude conditions. Exactly what had doomed the test flight all those years ago. She leaned back, heart pounding, a single bead of sweat tracing down her temple. It wasn't a coincidence. This flaw, this exact flaw, had been present in the original prototype too. And she had flagged it then, begged Victor to delay rollout. He dismissed her concerns with a curt wave, called her overcautious. After the crash, the official narrative was sealed before Aaron's body had even been recovered. Pilot error, equipment fatigue, unpreventable tragedy. Case closed. But now the ghost of that same mistake was staring her in the face, resurrected in chrome and arrogance. This wasn't just oversight. It was a pattern. Cover-up. She stood slowly, her gaze lifting across the room to where Victor leaned casually against the glass, watching her with that same unreadable smile. Except now, she was the one smiling, just slightly, with the steel edge of someone who knew something they weren't supposed to know. This engine had brought her back, yes. But it had also given her proof. This wasn't just about fixing a machine anymore. This was about uncovering a truth long buried, and reclaiming the voice they had stolen. With a flick of her wrist, she recalibrated the resonance dampeners, bypassed a faulty heat sensor, and realigned the magnetic throttle. 3 moves, simple and elegant. The engine coughed, sputtered, and then roared to life, smooth as silk, like it had been waiting all along for the right hands. Gasps erupted behind the glass. Engineers exchanged looks. Even Victor's composure cracked, just a hairline fracture, but it was there. Lena stepped back, wiped her hands on her jacket, and looked him dead in the eyes. "This engine didn't fail," she said quietly. "You did." And with that, the past came crashing into the present, not as a memory, but as a reckoning forged in steel. Lena didn't sleep that night. The hotel room felt too clean, too sterile, like it didn't belong to her. She sat by the window, her boots still laced, her jacket slung over the chair. Below, the city pulsed with indifferent lights, people chasing things that no longer meant anything to her. Promotions, praise, power. She stared out, watching headlights flicker like fireflies, and for the first time in years, she let herself feel it all: anger, sorrow, longing. And underneath it all, a quiet, simmering rage. They had taken everything. Aaron. Her future. Name. And now, they had taken his work and built a monument to it without a single ounce of honesty, without even whispering his name to the wind. The engine she had resuscitated today wasn't a victory. It was a scream from the past, begging to be heard. A truth hidden so well, the world had rewritten the ending without her consent. But not anymore. Lena got up and paced the room, the soles of her boots thudding softly against the carpet. She reached for her bag, pulling out the old black journal. It was battered, its corners curled from years of wear, its pages filled with scribbles, sketches, equations. Aaron's handwriting next to hers, side by side like a conversation frozen in time. She flipped to the page with the original throttle design, the one she had fought for, the one Victor had rejected. And just below it, Aaron's last note, half crossed out, like he hadn't finished the thought. "If it overloads in cold air, maybe we..." Stop there. Her throat tightened, and her fingers brushed the page as though touching it might bring him back. But grief had taught her better than that. He wasn't coming back. No one was. And if she didn't do something now, no one ever would. She stood still in the silence, breathing hard. A question pressed against her chest like a blade. What would he have done? He would have told the truth. No matter the cost. She thought about the engineers behind that glass today, their expressions torn between awe and confusion. She thought about the way Victor had stared at her, not as a threat, but as a variable he thought he could still control. And she thought about herself, about that girl in overalls with grease in her fingernails and fire in her heart, who had once believed that truth and brilliance were enough. Maybe they hadn't been then, but they had to be now. Lena turned on the desk lamp and opened her laptop, the screen flickering to life with cold urgency. She started writing. Not a confession, not a plea, but a declaration. A report with every technical anomaly she had discovered. Her own research. Aaron's original designs. An analysis so precise, no one could call it coincidence. She laid it out with the calm fury of someone who had nothing left to lose. When she was done, she saved the file, encrypted it, and sent it to 3 trusted contacts in the aviation world. People who had once believed in her before their silence betrayed their fear. Along with the file, she added a single line. I won't stay quiet anymore. Whether you stand with me or not, this ends now. Then she pulled out her phone. There was still one more call to make. Marcus DeWitt answered on the 3rd ring. His voice groggy but alert. He'd been Aaron's mentor once, back when idealism hadn't yet turned to resignation. Lena? He asked, unsure, almost afraid. I need you, she said, her voice low but unwavering. Not for me. For him. For what they've done. He was silent then. You're opening a war. Good, she replied. Then I know I'm not wasting my breath. The next morning, Lena Carter walked through Skytecha's doors not as a technician or a contractor, but as a storm. She wasn't here to prove herself. She was here to expose a lie. And she would not kneel again. The silence in the boardroom was suffocating. 12 of Skytecha's top executives sat stiffly around the oval table, hands folded like obedient schoolchildren, their faces masks of corporate composure. At the far end sat Victor Harland, flanked by his legal team, impeccably dressed, cold-eyed, unreadable. And opposite them, Lena stood alone, the only woman in the room, the only one who hadn't come to play a game. She didn't need a slideshow. She didn't need a lawyer. She had the truth, and this time it had a voice. A large screen behind her lit up with a schematic, the same one she and Aaron had first sketched on the back of a diner menu, years ago when dreams still felt safe. The design glowed in pale blue against the darkened room, and she watched as confusion flickered across faces, followed by recognition, then a dawning fear. This, Lena began, her voice steady, is the original prototype for the R-Series dual-phase engine. It was co-developed by myself and Aaron Wells during our tenure at Skytech, under a contract that never credited our names. We flagged a flaw in its thermal regulation during final testing. That flaw was ignored. Aaron died. The official report blamed him. She clicked again. The screen split into 2 designs. The original and the current R7000. And this is your latest innovation. The one you claim to develop independently. But it's not independent, is it? You took our work. You built on it, marketed it, raised billions from it, but never once acknowledged where it came from. And worse, you replicated the same thermal vulnerability that killed Aaron. You didn't fix it. You just buried it deeper. Whispers. The kind of shifting tension that signaled the air was about to break. Victor leaned forward slowly. His fingers steepled like he still believed he could contain this storm. You have no proof of ownership. No patents filed under your name. It's just a story. Lena turned to him, eyes blazing. Then explain this, she said, and pulled out the journal. It was battered, yes, but authentic in a way no digital file could imitate. She opened it to the page with Aaron's last note, the design they'd fought over, the one Victor had refused to delay for. Alongside it, a receipt, a time-stamped submission to the internal archive, signed with Lena's employee ID. I logged this design into Skytecha's archive on May 17, 2013. 4 months before the crash. Your legal team buried it during the investigation. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then one of the board members, a woman named Daria Fields, cleared her throat. "Victor, is this true?" He said nothing. Lena pressed on. "You didn't just ignore our warnings. You manipulated the outcome of the investigation. You allowed the public to believe Aaron was reckless, to protect your rollout schedule. You let me take the fall. And then you silenced me with a severance agreement that was barely a bribe." Victor's voice was low, controlled. "That's an accusation with serious consequences. So is letting a man die and calling it progress." She took a breath, holding the room's attention like a conductor mid-symphony. "I don't want money. I don't want your pity. I want his name cleared. I want every copy of that engine grounded and reevaluated. I want full credit restored in the engineering record. And I want the truth released publicly, because the world deserves to know who Aaron Wells was." Victor stood then, slow and deliberate, his face a study in fury, wearing the mask of civility. "You've just burned every bridge you had, Lena. No one will hire you after this. You'll be blacklisted across the industry." She smiled, not with arrogance, but with peace. "Then I'll build my own bridge," she said. "And I'll do it in his name." And just like that, the boardroom cracked. A single clap came from Daria. Then another from a younger executive across the table. It wasn't unanimous, not yet, but it was beginning. The truth was no longer hers alone. It had been passed hand to hand, heart to heart, and it would not be silenced again. Outside, the city waited, unaware that a tide had turned. But Lena knew. The lie had finally been broken. And Aaron, after all these years, was finally free. It wasn't victory that Lena felt as she walked out of the Skytech building for the last time. It was something quieter, deeper. The kind of stillness that comes after a long storm, when the ground is soaked and heavy, and the sun hasn't broken through yet. But you know it will. There were no reporters waiting. No applause. The world hadn't changed overnight. But something had shifted in her. The weight she'd carried for so long, the silence she had wrapped around herself like armor, had cracked wide open. For the first time in years, she breathed freely. A week passed. And two. The technical investigation she sparked gained momentum. Independent engineers began to speak up. Former interns dug out archived emails. A professor at MIT published a detailed analysis confirming her findings. And one afternoon, without warning, Skytech issued a formal statement. They were grounding the R7000 series for a complete structural review. No denial. No clever PR twist. They had no choice anymore. But Lena didn't follow the headlines. She had spent too many years chasing their approval, their recognition, their permission to belong. She wasn't interested in belonging anymore. Not to them. She moved back into the tiny garage where it had all begun. It was just a shell now. Dusty, rusted, the tools long gone, but it still smelled faintly of oil and memory. On the workbench, she laid down the journal, gently opened to Aaron's final sketches. She didn't cry. She didn't need to. There was no pain left in his name now. Only light. She took her time cleaning the space. Not out of nostalgia but purpose. Because she had something to build. Not for them, not to prove anything, but for the future she and Aaron once dreamed of when the world still felt honest. She started teaching again, in a small community college on the outskirts of the city. Her students weren't Ivy Leaguers. They were kids with calloused hands, worn-out shoes, questions that came out tangled in fear and wonder. And in them she saw herself, raw, stubborn, burning with a quiet brilliance the world often overlooked. She told them stories, not of betrayal or politics, but of friction, of flight, of engines that could hum like music if you listened closely. She taught them how to see machinery as more than metal, how to feel for the flaw, not just find it. And she spoke of Aaron, not as a cautionary tale, but as a man who loved deeply, built fiercely, and trusted too much. And one day, after class, a young woman lingered behind. She was quiet, nervous, holding a small model engine she had made out of spare parts. "I'm not sure it'll ever work," the girl said. "It's probably stupid." Lena took the model in her hands, studying it with reverence. The design was flawed, yes, but bold. unapologetic. "No," she said softly. "It's not stupid. It's the beginning." And in that moment, Lena Carter finally understood what worth really meant. Not the kind printed on checks or stamped on plaques, or whispered behind closed doors. Worth was the truth you refused to bury. The hand you reached back for after everyone else let go. The fire you protected even when it burned you. And most of all, worth was knowing that somewhere, in the heartbeat of an engine, in the quiet click of a turning gear, in the spark inside someone else, you had left behind something that could never be stolen. Not again. Not ever.